Thank you.
The future of Islamic banking in Oman is bright. This was the message of the speech by Mr. Abid Shakil. And the future of Islamic banking and finance is bright on the back of this huge existing and pent-up demand for Islamic banking and finance. Very encouraging remarks and analysis by Abid Shakil, who is a very experienced consultant, and his views are based on a very detailed analysis of the Omani market. Our second speaker for this morning is Dr. Salman Khan, who would look into the future of Islamic banking in Oman. Given that there is almost zero Islamic banking today, what are the prospects of Islamic banking in the country in the years to come? And his major focus would be on this question, why Oman is the ideal candidate to lead the move towards genuine Sharia-based ethical commerce away from Sharia-compliant banking. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm sure you would listen to this speech very carefully and would have a lot of questions afterwards. So Dr. Salman Khan, who is the head of Sharia for Dubai region for Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, he's with us today to share his thoughts on the topic. Dr. Salman Khan. Basically, as I mentioned, he's head of Sharia for Dubai regions for Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, not Dubai Islamic Bank, sorry.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone and greetings. I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers for allowing me this opportunity to speak on the subject, which is an extremely important subject as I see it and as many people see it. And a special thanks to Dr. Humayun Dar for extending this invitation to me. Let me begin by saying that this presentation seeks to be an uncomplicated one, to present certain simple issues where I will be revisiting certain basic fundamentals and highlighting one issue of crucial importance throughout this presentation, which is the fundamental misalignment of form and substance in this industry. It's an issue which needs to be understood, acknowledged, and tackled. The emphasis in this presentation is going to be that meaningful acknowledgement of a problem is an absolutely vital and important necessity if we are going to meaningfully have any reform with regard to a problem that's facing us. I'll also be speaking about why Oman, I'll touch upon this at the end, why Oman, as an emerging Islamic finance jurisdiction, is perhaps the best placed in order to play a leading role and act as a vanguard in this reform, this necessary reform in this industry, where we need to move away from Sharia-compliant banking towards Sharia-based operation. I'm going to aim to build a storyline throughout this presentation. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but I'll try and cover all the major points as well. I know that the subject matter may be viewed by some people as being a little controversial. I beg to disagree. I actually think it's not only is it reform-orientated and progressive, but actually it's vital and crucial that we need to understand these issues. And someone from within the industry needs to come forward and talk about it. A lot of Islamic economists and researchers who are sitting outside the industry have written a lot of critical and you could say constructive articles, but very few people from within the industry talk about the need to move towards Sharia-based operation. And the fact that we'll be sharing that I'll be trying to share my views with you in a frank manner, I mean, surely that is the purpose of the debate here. Surely that is the purpose why we're sitting here and sharing our views, so that we can improve the informational content we have available and move forward in the best way possible. The basic, you could say, plan for this short presentation is as follows. Excuse me. I'm going to start by looking at the key issue. Why is Islamic banking supposed to be attractive? It's a fundamental issue. Secondly, we'll be looking at the fundamental justification. What's the fundamental justification for Islamic finance as an industry to exist in the first place? Everything has a need and a reason to exist, so we'll be trying to look at what's the fundamental justification for this industry. Thirdly, we hear about this a lot, and we'll be trying to cover it and show the relevance to the overall subject matter, which is, what's the difference between Sharia compliant and Sharia based? I'm not going to leave it out there. I'm going to catch hold of it and try and define it so that we understand what it is and how it's relevant to the overall subject. Fourthly, I'm going to be introducing an extremely important aspect, which is the golden rule of Sharia-based operation. The golden rule of Sharia-based operation. And I'll try and explain what I mean by that and how it's relevant to the overall storyline here. Next, we'll be looking at the existing best practices in the Sharia-compliant industry as it exists now. I'll be giving out a list of 10 points, which will show you, based on objective analysis, what the existing best practice is. We will then compare that to a parallel set of 10 points for an equal and corresponding set of best practices that we should actually be targeting under a Sharia-based industry if we are going to achieve the actual purpose, the fundamental purpose of this industry. So we'll be comparing best practices in Sharia-compliant operation and Sharia-based operation, which will bring out some very, very, I believe, it'll give us a lot of food for thought, and it's going to be very thought-provoking. Then we'll ask ourselves the question at the end, theoretical talk is fine. In practice, is Sharia-based operation possible? And we'll conclude by just, if I have time at the end, very briefly talking about a structure for a Sharia-based industry, or how to conduct Sharia-based operation in terms of a real plan, not just rhetoric or just some kind of theoretical discussion. And right at the end, I will touch upon the fact and the idea why Oman is best placed to lead this movement forward. That's quite a long sort of introduction, but I'm afraid it was necessary so I could set the points in your mind. So as we go ahead, you'll realize and you'll keep in mind that we're following this continuum. Now, let's ask ourselves first of all, what's the attraction in Islamic finance? But before asking ourselves this question, keeping in mind that Islamic finance is based on the Sharia, let's instead begin by asking, what's the attraction in Sharia? What's the attraction in Sharia? Let's ask ourselves that question. Now, Sharia, as it seeks to instruct the lives of the people who are following it, Muslims and other people who Sharia seeks to address, there are two spheres, as we know. One is ibadat, which can loosely be translated as rituals, including, say, fasting and praying and acts like that. And the other is ma'amalat, which translates as mutual dealings. Mutual dealings in practice in everyday life, which includes things like social dealings, societal, legal, commercial, all of these mutual dealings. And in the view of some people, the comparison between rituals and practical dealing is a similar sort of comparison as can be made between the comparison between form and substance. So rituals, form, practical dealings, substance. Rituals, as we know, are emphasized in our societies for many reasons. I mean, they're quite easy to understand and see and observe. But I ask you, and I ask myself this question, what aspect of Sharia is the most attractive to people from a logical perspective, an experiential perspective, and a universal perspective? Why should we expect someone anywhere in the world? What aspect of Sharia should we expect that person to be naturally attracted to? I would put forward the view that the true appeal of Sharia lies in the real impact that Sharia has on our lives, where this real impact is expressed through the application of the ethical principles embodied by Sharia, the ethical principles prescribed by Sharia. For example, truth, honesty, justice, compassion, love, charity, brotherhood, protecting each other, takaful, those kind of concepts. These values and these ethical principles are universally recognized and respected. That's why when we observe these in operation, when we observe these in real life, in muamalat, we can easily relate to them and recognize them. And there's a spontaneous attraction towards these ethical principles, right? Therein lies the true attraction of Sharia, not some theory, but the actual practice. And the important issue relating the Sharia's ethical principles is that the application of Sharia's ethical principles must be demonstrable, must be visible in practice. Otherwise, rituals are of very little use just by themselves if they're not backed by practical action. Chapter 29, verse 45 of the Quran says that indeed prayer protects from evil deeds and lewd acts. But it also implicitly says that for those people who pray and still they do not stop carrying out evil acts, that prayer is of little use. So therein lies the vital importance of connection between talking and actually walking the talk. And it's no surprise that these ethical principles which I spoke about, truth, honesty, justice, so on and so forth, all of these are also there present in the other religions. All the major religions emphasize and celebrate these values equally. So it's no surprise, these are universal values which are fundamental to a just and a civil society. Now let's carry on and ask ourselves the question, why Islamic finance? Why do people say they want Islamic finance? Let's remind ourselves that conventional banking exists for a very long time. It's a firmly established industry in the region of 300 years old. And it claims that all needs are fulfilled by the conventional banking industry. It's got car loans, home loans, personal finance, everything. So why the demand for Islamic finance? The answer to that question simply is that in theory, people demand Islamic finance because they want to apply Sharia in their economic and financial matters in their personal lives to obtain solutions in line with Sharia values. Right? I'm stating the obvious here, I understand that, but I'm just making it so I explain the next point correctly or fully. The implications of saying that we want economic and financial solutions based on the Sharia, the implications of that statement means that we are saying that the existing conventional banking solutions do not contain the necessary moral, Sharia, and ethical values that we would like to see, which is why we are avoiding conventional banking. Right? That's the logical conclusion. What's missing is the ethical principles of Sharia. So, if we are now going to talk about Islamic finance as an alternative to conventional banking, and we know that people want Islamic banking and finance in theory because they want something that conventional banking is not giving them, then in the context of Islamic finance, what are those values which an Islamic finance system must have in terms of muamalat, in terms of commercial dealings? I've put together some of the major points which include fairness and honest dealing, sound ethics and good morality, honest transactions, avoidance of exploitation, maintaining societal benefit, making sure that wealth circulates and is not concentrated, to have transparency, openness, and full disclosure so that you have nothing to hide, and the avoidance, obviously, of interest, uncertainty, gambling, wrongdoing at all times. These are the necessary Sharia ethical principles that must be there in any Islamic finance industry in practice, because this is the fundamental justification for an Islamic finance industry to exist. This is the necessary value added that must be there in an Islamic finance industry, which is not being afforded, not being provided by conventional banks. The fundamental justification. So let's move on. So if the fundamental justification is to be honored and we need all of those Sharia ethical principles, then we conclude that Sharia-based operation founded on those ethical principles is a must. We must have that. And not Sharia-compliant operation. Now we come to this issue of Sharia-compliant and Sharia-based. There's much debate on the issue, and we have here many different views. Let's try and summarize. And this summary is based, obviously, on my views. You're free to disagree, but let me present what I think is the summary. Sharia compliant products and services must, by definition, objectively speaking, work within a conventional banking infrastructure and support system, by definition, by design, because they seek to work in a manner where you have an existing conventional infrastructure and you seek to find your space for your Islamic products within the existing conventional infrastructure. This is an objective statement, not a critical one. The other thing we notice about Sharia compliant products is that very often, the purpose of the product diverges radically from the manner in which it is executed. I have numerous examples I can share with you, but I'm not going to give you just one example. For example, a sale and leaseback. Neither is the sale intended by either party, neither is the lease intended by either party, and the only intention is to grant a sum of money to the customer as finance and for the bank to take back that money plus a benefit. This is just one example, and the time is not enough, so I can go into more, give you more examples. But if there is time for questions or later on in the discussion, I'm free to answer any question absolutely that you might have on the subject. The third aspect of Sharia compliant operation is that when you look at the contracts underlying the products, we notice one thing time and again on a very, very recurrent basis, which is that contracts, when they are designed in a Sharia compliant way or edited, you just have alterations to individual components in the contract. So one problematic issue, you just try and find some kind of Sharia solution for it. And what's missing is that the overall purpose of this whole combination of contracts and combination of clauses is ignored. And this happens on a regular basis. And it needs to be understood that it happens, and it needs to be acknowledged. So many people say Sharia compliant banking has a problem because there is no spirit of Sharia involved in this structure. In contrast, the view is, let's have Sharia-based operation, which embodies the spirit of Sharia, where there's a holistic design starting from A to Z based on what you need. You don't try and achieve a certain outcome by having certain other combination of outcomes. But what does that mean? Can we summarize it, Sharia-based operation? Can we summarize it in a way that we can understand it even further? We can reduce Sharia-based operation and its requirements to two main maxims, to two main requirements. Number one, in one form or the other, it is absolutely unfair to have any unfair benefit of one party at the expense of the other. This is a basic fundamental maxim, and it's expressed through the prohibition of interest, through gharar, through uncertainty, through jahala, all of these things, right? And the second one is that actions must be aligned with intentions. The very first hadith of Bukhari is innamal a'malu bin niyat. So this whole debate about maqasid not being important is, in my personal view, it has no basis. Just because our scholars and our philosophers in the ancient times didn't use the word maqasid until Ghazali, it doesn't mean that in the time of the Prophet, maqasid were not an issue. Of course they were an issue, just no one said the word maqasid al-Sharia. They were 100% an issue. The whole of the Prophet's lives is founded on the fact that he made the right decisions based on the right maqasid, the right purposes. So we have to have no unfair benefit, one at the expense of the other, and we have to have an alignment of intentions and actions in a way that form and substance are both covered, and theory equals practice, and the purpose of the products is in line with their execution. Moreover, in line with this necessity of the alignment of purpose and execution, let me introduce to you the golden rule of Sharia-based operation. The golden rule of Sharia-based operation is a very simple one which relates to the necessities of honesty, fairness, openness, and transparency. And it says, I am what I claim to be. I'll just explain that. The golden rule says, I am what I claim to be. Let me explain that. Financial products, mudaraba, musharaka, murabaha, salam, so on and so forth, they are all applications of certain real-life Sharia permissible commercial transactions, right? They are applications. What do I mean by that? I mean that the commercial transactions, you have basically 3 or 4 main commercial transactions which are permissible in Sharia. The first is trade, very common, includes purchase and sale. It's permissible. Then you have lease or investment. Lease or ijara. The third, you have investment. And the fourth, you have agency. All of these commercial transaction templates have parallel spin-off products, have products which are based on these commercial transaction templates. So for trade, you have murabaha, based on trade, and salam and istisna, so on and so forth. Lease, you have ijara, and investment, you have mudaraba. I'm focusing on those three because they are the crucial three products. Now, the golden rule is that in order to be genuinely in line with Sharia, products must demonstrably show or possess the characteristics of the commercial transaction on which they are supposed to be based. I'll repeat that, it's very important. In order to be genuinely in line with Sharia, products must demonstrably and really and factually possess the characteristics of the commercial business transactions on which these products claim to be based. What are these characteristics? If we talk about the commercial business transaction templates, then we talk about trade, then we have to know that trade transactions, as they are known the world over, as they are recognized and appreciated the world over in all jurisdictions, have the following justifications. The seller takes real ownership, the seller takes risk of inventory, the seller arranges the insurance, the pricing is based on cost of operation, not IBOR. The seller takes real possession prior to selling the goods. There is a real transfer of possession of the goods, and there are no advance promises in real sale and trade as we know it in your local markets in Oman, in Dubai, in Jeddah, in Venezuela, in Brazil, in Pakistan, anywhere. When real trade is happening, none of this happens. Secondly, when we talk about lease, then we know that in lease, when it's real lease, as we know it in our lives, in our everyday lives, in real lease, the lessor takes real ownership of the asset. There is the calculation of the rental is based on a market rental average, not on IBOR. IBOR is the demand and supply of money in the money market. It has nothing to do absolutely with the rental market pricing. There is no justification to impose that average in a rental market, right? And there is no need in a real ijara for the lessor to first secure a buyer for the property before he decides to lease it out, right? That's real ijara, real lease. And there is no advance promises to lease which are taken from the lessor in real ijara as we know it in our lives, real ijara. Similarly, in investment, the returns must be real and based on the project, and there must be genuine profit and loss sharing based on, profit should be based on project fundamentals, not IBOR. These are the real commercial transaction templates of trade, lease, and investment, and these are the characteristics they must have. Similarly for other products. So, genuine Sharia-based products must follow the golden rule. So if it's a murabaha, it must have these characteristics. If it's an ijara, it must have those characteristics. If it's a mudaraba, it must have those characteristics, because I'm saying I'm a murabaha, I'm a sale and purchase transaction. I claim to be that, right? So let me walk the talk and let me show that I have those characteristics. Similarly for ijara, similarly for mudaraba. Let's pause there. We're going to come back to this in a second. Let's pause there and make some necessary acknowledgements about this industry and the path it has taken to stand at the point where we are standing right now. Firstly, the raison d'etre of the industry is Sharia, and the fact that we need to have Sharia-based operation, right? But the reality is that since inception, the practice has diverged from theory, and the development of the industry has happened in a haphazard fashion. So you have products and systems which are fit within a conventional infrastructure in whatever manner is possible. And product development is exclusively based on a system of reverse engineering where you take a product from the conventional side and you try and find a Sharia parallel product for that. Many people may say there's nothing wrong with this, but I would disagree with that based on certain facts. And here is the crux of the argument. The four fundamental pillars in conventional banking, which hold up the whole conventional banking industry, are the first that money itself is a commodity, so you can buy and sell it at a profit, which is what interest is. You buy and sell money at a profit. Secondly, you have time value of money. So if I give you $1, I should take back that dollar plus interest which is my compensation, which is my time value of money for lending you that dollar. Thirdly, any transaction that I do as a conventional bank should happen in such a way that I first secure my own interest and benefit. And fourthly, if I'm making any profit or benefit as a conventional bank, I must do it without sharing any risk by definition. That's what the credit risk management departments of all conventional banks will tell you. Now, let's look at the reality. How well aligned, because we said that Sharia-compliant banking operates within the conventional banking structure, which is based on those 4 principles, fundamental principles. You're trying to play your game within a playing field which has those 4 basic rules. But if we look at it, every single one of those basic rules is not only disallowed by Sharia, but it's fundamentally rejected by Sharia. So you cannot have money as a commodity, you cannot have the time value of money, you cannot secure your own interest, and profit must be based on risk sharing, right? So the rules of the game fundamentally which you're seeking to follow are different. What are the results of that? The results are that we are constantly facing an identity crisis in this industry where we are trying to always fit the product to some other system, always. This is a constant identity crisis, in such a way that the product characteristics and the benefits and the cash flows and the liabilities and the economic impacts are always, of the Sharia-compliant product, are always in line, have to be in line with the conventional banking products. In fact, a well-behaved product from a Sharia perspective, from a Sharia-compliant perspective, is one that has all of these features so it can operate well in the conventional banking infrastructure. This is the fact of the matter. And here we come to a very important conclusion, which I spoke to you before about the golden rule, about I must be what I claim to be. Sharia permits you to have real-world transactions such as trade and investment, but what has happened in the industry over time on a constant basis is that you have these real-world transactions which are permitted. They are subjected to an engineering process called innovation. Following that, you have the emergence of financial products, so that rather than trade and investment transactions, what you end up with are products such as a banking murabaha, financial lease, ijara muntahiya bit tamliq, banking mudaraba, where these banking products have very different characteristics to the original transactions, commercial transactions on which they are based. So the golden rule is constantly ignored on a constant basis. The second result is that you need, in order to structure products properly and successfully in a Sharia-compliant structure, you need to excel at you need to excel in the knowledge of the conventional banking structure, all of those points, products, core banking, payments, and you also need to know those aspects of Sharia specifically, which allow you to fit the products, Sharia interpretations which allow you to fit the Sharia-compliant product within the conventional operation. This is what you need to know. The result is that the best practice in the existing Sharia-compliant banking industry is as follows. You have Sharia-compliant products based on a 2-tier model, financial model of an intermediary. You have the concept of an Islamic bank. You have the time value of money, LIBOR pricing, debt-based copy-paste products. The focus is on the form. The contracts are largely synthetic. You have contract combination, and you're always competing with conventional. In contrast, if you really want Sharia-based products, you should have 10 equal and opposite points. I'm not going to repeat them, but all of them are very different to the 10 points which you have under Sharia-compliant operation. Just to get an idea, you should have Sharia-based operation on a genuine business model with real equity and profit sharing. The focus must be on the substance of the real deals, and the contracts must be genuine and really purpose-built without any contract combination, and you should not be competing with conventional banks to do what they do in a better manner. The necessary acknowledgements include one acknowledgement, which is that if we are going to follow the golden rule, then I'm going to make a controversial statement here in the view of some, but I don't believe it to be controversial, which is that we know that Islamic banks cannot be lenders. I'm going to say that I think that Islamic banks should operate as traders, investors, and entrepreneurs. So they do trade, leasing, and investment. And they shouldn't operate on the model of a financial intermediary, which is a conventional banking model of taking money at X and giving it out at X plus Y, where Y is your spread. You finance transactions as a financial intermediary. You don't actually carry out the business. This is the problem. So the question is, what about banks? Can we have banks? And we need to address this issue and talk about it and discuss it. I just will ask for 2 minutes more, if I can, just to wrap up the discussion. I'm going to talk about, I said to you that whatever I've said to you is based, in my view, on a practical application, the possibility of real translation into facts in a factual system in real life. So how can we have a Sharia-based model of business? Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge the issues, or at least be ready to debate them in an open and honest manner, right? Following that, we can have a fact-based reform plan based on open discussion and dialogue. Of course, progress is going to be slow. Of course, progress will not be overnight. We all understand that, right? But we have to begin by acknowledging the issue and move forward. The 4 pillars of Sharia-compliant operation are basically ideology, infrastructure, demand, and supply. These are the pillars on which you can base a very well-functioning Sharia-based industry. What do I mean? And I'll have to go a little quickly to finish it off because I have a time commitment here. The first pillar is ideology. It's based on the fact that the target must be that the Sharia-based products and systems must be bespoke. They must be specifically designed or tailored in order to achieve what need you want, not to have this execution to achieve that need. That's the first point. You must have ideological, philosophical commitment to this philosophy in an open and a demonstrable manner. That's the first pillar, first requirement. The second requirement relates to infrastructure in a Sharia-based model. Infrastructure is of 2 kinds. Number 1 is Sharia governance, an absolutely vital and crucial issue where the definition of the key roles of the players in Sharia, in Sharia operational issues in banks, which includes Sharia board, Sharia scholars, Sharia technicians, Sharia practitioners, the Sharia compliance department, the fatwa procedure, all of that must be defined very clearly, and there should be a system of accountability to ensure high performance. This is very, very important. The sustainability and reputation of the industry depends on this. And in this regard, I'd like to commend Malaysia specifically, which has come out with an excellent standard. It's not really applied, but it's an excellent standard, which is the IFSB's guiding principles on Sharia governance, right? And the second aspect of the infrastructure is that we need to develop a product infrastructure. So accounting, auditing, taxation, regulation, legal systems, IT systems, all of these which have to be designed bespoke to support Sharia products, not to fit them within a conventional structure. And second to last, we need to understand another important point. The onus does not lie only on banks to offer Sharia-based products. It is also the fact that a vast majority of customers are not ready for Sharia-based products. They are not ready to share profit. We need to understand that. There's been conditioning over the last so many years of customers to only accept fixed returns. So if we are going to have a Sharia-based system, we need to have targeted programs to reach the customers. I cannot go over all those details because I don't have time, but just understand, we need to understand that that needs to be part of the program. And finally, the supply side, which is how to supply these products, that has 4 aspects. The first is the Sharia support infrastructure, which includes developing new scholars. It's very, very important. The second is the issue of human development, which the previous speaker referred to, and I agree with that. You need to have human development and good staff. You need to develop that. The third is research and development, which is genuine. And the fourth is to have a strategy which is in line with your overall philosophy. Those are the 4 keys: ideology, infrastructure, demand, and supply. What is the role of Oman? And I'm going to conclude in 30 seconds. The role of Oman is as follows. Firstly, Oman is starting this Islamic finance journey right now afresh, anew, right? And Oman's slate, Oman's past is cleaner than most. By that I mean Oman doesn't have any baggage. It doesn't have any previous kind of, half measures which it has tried to adopt, or any kind of partial endeavors that it has engaged on before in order to, fit things within a conventional banking system. So Oman has the wonderful opportunity to act as a pioneer, to work on a holistic solution from the outset, and to implement it and to act as a model where it can learn from the past mistakes, but it avoids the past mistakes of other jurisdictions. I believe this is a wonderful and historic opportunity, specifically in the context of the fact that right now, as we stand here in this world, there is increasing debate and challenges and unease which is being felt about the overall direction of the Islamic finance industry, but also the fact that in other parts of the world, there's a very strong movement which is gaining ground against interest and financial exploitation all over the world, and we see that in the form of Occupy Wall Street and many other endeavors which are going on right now. So this, I conclude with a strong appeal to the authorities here to consider this wonderful opportunity that they have. Also, I'm sorry if I went over time by a few minutes.